Tony Adams was the leader of the Premier League's most celebrated defence. Cajoling, inspiring and leading by example. He was the on-field figurehead of a revolution at one of England's most traditional clubs. Tony Adams is a legend of the Barclays Premier League. He made his debut for Arsenal at 17 and was captain at 21. He was born to it, eventually making more than 500 league appearances and playing 66 times for England.
I think he got into the first team when he was 17, made his debut, and even David O'Leary said normally when a younger player gets into the side you have to nurture them, you have to sort of advise them what to do, where to go, and you have to talk them through it. It was the other way around with Tony Adams. He went straight in when he was 17 and he started dictating to David O'Leary, and then all the senior players, the likes of Viv Andersons and the Kenny Sampsons, knew that he had a lot of ability and could see that in training. And then your test is when you go into the first team environment. And as a younger player, do you shrink or do you thrive on that responsibility? And right from the age of 17, I think Tony thrived on the responsibility.
Holston laying it forward, hoping that Akuku could make something of it. And no-nonsense defending from the Arsenal skipper, Tony Adams.
Although he was young in years, he was the leader. He radiated something for everyone else, and it drew everybody to him. And when you witness something like that, it really is special. And he's a special player. He's a special person as well.
He was one of them sort of characters that you could tell he was a born leader. I think George Graham straight away, at 21 years old, knew he could give him the armband as captain, and he would have been the driving force of that team.
Well, Tony Adams playing a captain's part back there. There are some men who might not be playing tonight with that stitched-up ear of his on the left side, but he doesn't worry about things like that. Stitches or no stitches, he ploughs on.
He led by example. He'd lead by example on defending set pieces and in general play, and putting his head where he thought he'd get a kick in the face.
If you asked me to put a mental picture together of Tony Adams playing, it wouldn't be hitting striking passes, it wouldn't be scoring great goals, it would be of him pushing and pulling people around the pitch.
I was lucky enough to play quite a few times with England with him when he was captain and stuff, and it was just an inspiration, really.
You knew what you were going to get from Tony Adams. You knew you were going to get 100%. Very rarely have a bad game, and to have somebody like that lead you out actually lifts you as a player.
When I first started playing, he'd been obviously playing for England for quite a few years before me, and he was the dominant voice that I heard. Always encouraging you, even during the game, always helping you, even when he wasn't having a great game.
He was very demonstrative in the dressing room before he went out. It was, I think Terry Butcher was his hero, and he was like the cage lions and tigers. Let's go out there and get amongst them. And he'd punch the wall and he'd headbutt the wall to get himself psyched up.
It was always Tony you would hear in the last few minutes before going out to really get the boys up. When he spoke, you listened and you followed. It's as simple as that.
He was a fantastic leader. Don't look at the player, look at the package, and start with leader.
He does the ritual beforehand, shake your hand and pat you on the back, and then kicks you. I think that's the best way to describe him, Off the pitch, he's your mate. On the pitch, you're his enemy.
Adams very quickly into the challenge, and Ferdinand stays down.
He could tackle very, very well. He was very solid. People said he wasn't the quickest centre-back, but he read the game pretty well, and I would suggest that probably 99% of the tackles that Tony went in for, he came out the other side on top, and it was an outstanding defender.
Upped on by Goss. Sutton is being very, very closely patrolled indeed by Tony Adams and Steve Bold.
Bearing in mind I started in the days when you could tackle from behind, and you certainly knew when you played against Tony Adams, it's balls being hit up, you try and get hold of it, or get your body in, and then you'd maybe count him ahead for sort of a second, and by the time I got to the second, I was probably lying on the floor in a heap.
Chris Sutton is hurt. This is how. Tony Adams, the culprit.
He'll do what he needs to do to win, and if it means going through you, that's what he done. But the thing is with Tony, you know there's nothing personal involved in it.
Adams under pressure here from Cole.
I don't think he was a malicious defender. He would go in very hard and very strong, and I was on the receiving end a few times. But I always thought, you know, he wasn't one of those that you thought was definitely going in to try and hurt you. He was all about winning the ball, and you know, if he happened to have to take the man at the same time, it was never I didn't think it was ever in a malicious way.
Throughout his career, Adams battled alcoholism.
I've immense admiration for Adams because he confronted his inner demons that had seen him locked away at Her Majesty's pleasure at one stage.
He went to prison, obviously, in 1990 for his drink driving case, and I think he got a 3-month sentence and he served a month. And prison can change a lot of people. And when he came out, he was a changed man, but I think he'd probably had time to reflect on, you know, where his life was going, his career was going.
And emerged with great dignity and poise, and emerged a better human being, a better footballer. He benefited from Arsene Wenger's new scientific methods, which meant, for a start, no alcohol.
Arsene Wenger changed that completely, made it a completely alcohol-free bar, where it used to be a free bar when I was there, which was quite handy, to be fair, after the games. But he made it what they call a dry bar. Made the senior players, the Steve Bowles, the Tony Adams, the Lee Dixons and Nigel Winterburns realise that if you looked after your body better and you cut the alcohol out, you could prolong your career. And I think that's probably when he had sort of this epiphany where he thought, right, if I want to prolong my career, I'm going to have to cut out that way of life.
I mean, that's his character, you know. He's very strong-minded, very strong-willed. You know, there's not many people who can actually, you know, go through what he's been through. I mean, he's been through a lot as Tony, and come out the other side, still had a smile on his face, still, you know, telling people what to do, still is giving people the right instructions, and still leading by example. I think, you know, that really does show the mark of the man.
He was part of that formidable Arsenal backline. You know, Steve Bold and the Dixon and Winterburn and the fullbacks, they were just not nice to play against, you know. And you think one of them was out, and Martin Keown would come in, and you think, oh God, I'm in for a tough day today.
And now it's down to Asprilla. Bold doesn't know quite which way to go, but he's holding him up well. And then his long-time colleague and partner in crime, Adams, did the rest.
I would have loved to have played in that back four because they knew exactly what to do. It was instinctive, and the way they played together. And I think that's why, looking at the age that they then played too, because there was such a good understanding there. You know, a lot of the time, the first yard was always in their head.
I don't think they were just the most famous back four in Arsenal's history and Premier League. I think they were the best domestic back four that this country's ever seen. Individually, they might not have been the best in their positions. Tony Adams, arguably, obviously had a very successful England career. I think he had 60 caps, whereas if you look at Lee Dixon, he probably had 20. Nigel Winterburn, probably, you know, 10, 15. I think Steve Bold was probably 1 or 2. But it's the way they play together as a unit.
Trying to trickle in again. He's got good support this time. Hughes, Adams stretching. Keown. Good defending by Tony Adams again for Arsenal.
Opposition teams knew that if we scored, then virtually that was game over. It was a great psychological tool to have, because you could see that it actually deflate the opposition. As soon as we scored, you know, the reputation went around is this back four doesn't concede goals. If I was an England manager, we had Dave Seaman, England's goalkeeper as well, I'd have played that back four, because when you're meeting on international duty, you haven't got to work anything. You've got your back four, they all know each other, they've all got an understanding, so play them as a unit. And I don't think it ever happened.
But I do remember when Robbie Fowler scored a fastest hat-trick of all time at Anfield against that back four and made Tony Adams and his friends look stupid. Scored a hat-trick in 3.5 minutes. Magnificent.
For a time, he was even a feature of the showbiz pages.
We was amazed by that. I couldn't believe it. I've roomed with Tony for 10 years, and, you know, when he pulled Caprice, I was like, how did you do that? And he said, I don't know.
We actually never saw him with Caprice, and apparently they had the same agent, which is, you know, quite a coincidence. So we used to call him Jackanory, or a bit of a Billy Liar.
Them days he'd given up his drinking. He was a lot more sensible then, and I think she really liked it, his mentality or his humour. I don't know how, but you know.
He did like a tall story. You sit him down and, you know, where he'd been the night before and who he'd been with, so we just took that with a pinch of salt. But to be fair, it's not bad on your CV, because everybody still talks about it, but I wouldn't believe that too much if I was you.
Tony Adams spent 19 glorious years at Arsenal, much of that time with his hand in the air.
Brilliant skill! Giggs is offside. They won't count this. Offside. It's Giggs. York's offside. Just can't get that final ball right at the moment, Manchester United, can they?
There's the upright arm when George Graham was manager, as they all stepped forward in unison to claim yet another offside on the way to a 1-0 victory, inevitably.
It was choreographed. It was, again, that was from George Graham. It went through the whole back four, where we didn't really play an offside trap, but the way George Graham set the back four up, we defended quite a high line with the two full-backs pushed in front of the centre-halves, and it was the centre-halves who would play the offside, because they knew full well that Nigel Winterburn and Lee Dixon weren't dropping in behind them. And it was ingrained in them that as soon as the ball was played forward and they thought that the opposition forward was offside, the whole back four would put their arms up.
Even got mentioned in the film called The Full Monty that they all did the Arsenal trap, and they had it off to a fine art.
And what that actually does is, even if the linesman isn't sure, it makes them think, oh, it must have been offside. So the linesman, it's like Pavlov's dog, you actually do it automatically, where you'll put your flag up if it's a borderline decision.
And Chris Sutton looks even more important now. And offside. But he's offside. What a tight call, that.
I have to say it was very effective, because there was probably hundreds of times during their career where all four of them, the arms go up, and the linesman, I think, just automatically went, oh, Tony Adams has put his arm up, this must be offside. And up his flag went, and you go, well, it was about 4 yards on, what are you doing?
They worked all week on it, I know, but equally Adams was the leader of the offside trap and had the highest arm.
Arsene Wenger's arrival at Arsenal led to a new chapter in Tony Adams' career.
Then Arsene Wenger turned up. Those same players who were sort of oppressed in a way into doing things regimented got this freedom to express themselves that they've never had before. And, you know, that famous back four, you know, they were revelling in it.
If you think back to when he first started, you know, our centre-halves in England didn't play. What we did was defend. We tackled, we headed, and we made sure we stopped the other team playing. When Wenger came, he says, no, Tony, what we actually want you to do is pass the ball.
He allowed the players to express themselves a little bit more, actually gave them more responsibility on the ball.
People used to give him a lot of stick in his early days. Donkey Adams couldn't trap a bag of cement, whatever. I think when Wenger came, he showed what a good player he was. He used to come out defence and, you know, make forward runs, and see him score a couple of great goals, one with his left foot.
Tony even surprised Arsene Wenger at how good he was on the ball. And the biggest compliment I could play Tony is if he was in Arsenal's back four now as a centre-half, Arsenal would win the Premier League.
I do remember Tony telling me once when Arsene Wenger first came to the club, told me about what happens on an away game. Now, normally at that period, on an away game, we would get on the coach, travel 2-3 hours to the hotel, we'd meet 7 o'clock for something to eat, and off back to the room. Well, Tony was at pains to tell me, he says, you're not going to believe what Wenger's got us doing. I said, what's that? He says, we stretch. We get off and stretch. We've got to go into a room and stretch for half an hour. He thought it was ridiculous. Of course, a few years later, he thought, you know what, that was a wonderful thing that we did, and it made him last that much longer.
Under George Graham, he won 2 league titles. Under Wenger, he won 2 more, including the double in 2002 at the age of 35. For a centre-half, Tony Adams knew how to score goals. 32 in the league alone, and none were penalties.
He seemed to get on the end of things that sometimes he had no right to get on the end of. And, you know, to score 32 goals, there'd be some strikers who'd be happy with 32 goals, let's be honest. But, you know, he was very determined getting on the end of crosses off corners.
And he was always hard to mark, Tony. We had, them days, we had some good, you know, people attack the ball. Like Stevie Bowl scored lots of goals, you know, always the flick on at the front post as well. Martin Keown, when he played, went up, and he was always aggressive in the box as well. And he was very important, Tony. You know, he scored some really important goals for us.
Tony Adams' most significant goal was the FA Cup semi-final against Spurs at Wembley. We played Spurs a couple of years before and unfortunately got beat 3-1. So, you know, this was sort of like revenge time.
Adam scored a few. I know where you're going. Adam scored a few, and I was playing for Tottenham against Arsenal at Wembley in a semi-final of an FA Cup, where I was picking up Tony Adams at the far post, and he got above me and scored a goal to beat us 1-0 and knock us out the FA Cup, where they went on to win it. So very bad memories about picking Tony Adams up.
I particularly remember being in the bath after, and we had a beer when we sat down there, and it was just, you know, he was just closing his eyes, relishing the moment, because it was a good payback.
I would maintain that his best ever goal was scored on Boxing Day 2000 against Leicester City at Highbury, and I was fortunate enough to be the commentator that day. And he received the ball in his own half and gave the ball, and then he started to run up the pitch, and I thought, well, where's he going? And the ball worked its way out to the right wing, and Thierry Henry got hold of it. And then I remember this figure still with number 6 on his back running, and I said, Adams is continuing his run, what's going on? And what was going on was that Adams had seen this vision in his head that Henry was going to cross the ball to the far post, and he met it so sweetly at the far post and swept in an outrageous half volley to celebrate Christmas a day late. And Highbury stood open-mouthed at what their captain had just done, the fact that he'd run the length of the pitch to get on the end of a cross from Thierry Henry. It was sort of role reversal, really, and sweep in this magnificent goal. For me, that was my defining memory of Tony Adams.
Oh, and it's Adams! They've scored in stoppage time at the end of the first half, and Derby have cracked.
Tony was one of them sort of characters. He never just stayed in one position. You know, centre half. All of a sudden, you see him left wing. You think, maybe we're chasing the game, and that's the sort of character he had. We'd never give up. You know, even if I have to score the goal.
Derby got their marking wrong, and Adams came round the back and bulleted it past Holt, and the league leaders lead today.
Not only could he head the ball, he had a great leap, a natural jump where, you know, most people at 6'4" couldn't jump. But Tony had a great leap, and just be able to head the ball where he wanted to go, which was great for them. It was horrible if he was trying to mark him.
Driven in by Petit, and Tony Adams towered above everybody else to get that accurate header in on target.
I think when the ball goes into the box, sometimes it's just the bravest, and it's the one that really wants to get there. And if you wanted to get there, you know that Tony Adams' head was not going to be far away from you. So I was glad I was on the post.
Bolden Adams lurking inside that 6-yard box. It's
The abiding memory of Tony on the pitch would be the memory of him coming for a massive group of players from corners, from attacking corners. We used to have the old Arsenal corner where it was drilled into the near post. Steve Bold would flick it on, and then Tony Adams would come flying through a load of like boots and heads and elbows as if he'd been shot out of a cannon. And I can remember scoring a goal at Old Trafford as well like that. Obviously, he did it in big games.
And the header is in by Adams. Tony Adams, the captain, gives Arsenal the lead. 14 minutes gone.
It's a goal which clinched Arsenal's first Premier League title in 1998 in a game against Everton, which has become his most iconic.
Well, the Everton goal was amazing. This is the game we had to win the league at Highbury. A beautiful day. It was perfect conditions, packed house, And again, we was a little bit nervous because we're going into a game. We was playing with so much confidence at the time. We shouldn't have been nervous, but we was because of the importance of the game. And we seemed to. Overmars was on fire that day. I think he scored 2 goals. I think it was an own goal as well. So we know we're going to win the league now. There's probably a few minutes left.
I can actually remember it quite vividly. He picked the ball up from the halfway line. He exchanged a 1-2 with Steve Bold, who was our other centre-half. And I've never seen that happen. I've never seen them two pass together before when I played.
And Tony Adams, which he did do quite often, sort of galloped through the midfield. And we were thinking, where's he going?
Everyone thought, well, he's got to stop running soon because he's in uncharted territory. I mean, he hasn't got a map for this part of the pitch as he approached the Everton penalty area.
And Steve Bold just put a great little ball, timed at the offside like a dream. And he seemed to pop up to Tony, sort of chested it. And he looked like he miscontrolled it at the time. And then he hits it on half volley with his left foot. And it flies in the top corner, and
it was him saying to the crowd, I'm actually, other than a fantastic defender and captain, I'm a very, very good player, which we all knew anyway.
What a finish, and what a way to win the league. Is your skipper gets set up by your other centre-half and puts him through, and you win 4-1. And even after the game, he was all saying, Tom, we didn't know you could do things like that.
I would say that even given Tony Adams' amazing career, this might be the highlight. They wrote him off. They wrote Arsenal off. They wrote Arsene Wenger off. Manchester United had it won. And we were all so wrong.